which is Dr. Deep Khare, I can see there, Mr. Ajay Singh, Mathura Prasad ji, Chitrakala ji, Kavita is here, everyone. So I may keep speaking about you as we go along, but having said this, in totality, my sincere thanks to each and every speaker who was with us. If I may say, if this is the final leg, you were with me while we were building this leg, if I may say, right? So everyone was very important, and trust me, and I was sharing while you had not joined in, I will, at the cost of repeating myself, I'll quickly repeat, which is that in the next 48 hours after today's session, we have got all the priorities which were either listed, which were sent to us through our forms, which we were all filling in, or what we curated during those sessions. So what we're going to do is that we'll pick up the top 25 of them, we send it to all of you on IPN, and we will request you to, at one more time, give it a like a top 10 priority as per you, because a lot of them are, if I may say, it's like 740 people who have sent in those stuff. So I mean, to select few of them, I personally feel the best way is to send it back to you once more. Okay. I want to really start this on dot on time, which is sharp at 5 o'clock. So it is by my clock, 5 o'clock. So thank you very much. We will begin with one of my guests, which I've got today, and then we'll go to our conversation with all the speakers which are with us today. So I will like to first welcome Dr. Prem Maheshwari. Good to have you with us, Dr. Prem.
Thanks.
And as a matter of introduction, obviously I'll begin that. But having said this, we would like to, we in fact are embarking on a partnership, hopefully after this session, but this is where I thought I would at least bring in, as a brief introduction to them. We will actually be giving the stage to Dr. Prem, who is from D2L, which is Desire to Learn, headquartered in Canada. D2L believes learning is the foundation upon which all progress and achievement rest. As the creators of a very, I think, what I have understood is LMS product, but Space D2L has been working closely with more than 1,500 organizations globally for more than 20 years, transforming the way 15 million people learn online and in the classroom. Without any further ado, I would request Dr. Prem to be with us because we have an absolutely packed lineup, if I may say, on the timeline. So I would request Dr. Prem, who is the business director of Southeast Asian region, and we will start with his message to us on technology bit, how they are changing the world around us, because I'm sure one of the major priorities which we have come through is the tools, and a lot of tools around technology which the educators have adopted over the period of some past 7 to 8 months specifically. And every one of us obviously needs a lot of direction. Hopefully, we can hear some bit of it with you. Over to you, Dr. Prem.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gaurav, and it's my privilege and pleasure to be part of this galaxy of stars and principals from all over the country. And thanks for this opportunity to introduce Desire to Learn, or D2L, which is world's most innovative learning management platform that we have, invariably now present in India also. D2L, formerly called as Desire to Learn, is a Canadian headquartered company, and we are headquartered in a place called Kitchener, close to Toronto. And when I say one of the most innovative learning management platforms, this is innovative in the sense that the tools and technology that this platform provides to schools like yourselves is unique, because when we talk about K-12, ecosystem, education ecosystem, there are important pieces to that ecosystem, and one of the most important pieces is students. And all of you would agree that the students who study in your schools today were born after year 2000, which means when they actually started understanding world around them, they understood technology. They played with the smartphones and iPhones and computers and laptops. And therefore, the way they learn today is absolutely different from the way we used to learn when we used to study in these schools. Similarly, teaching and learning has also transformed in a major way, and specifically so in past 8 months, because COVID-19 has actually transformed the way world today learns, and you all must have experienced that happening in your respective schools with your students. Now, with so much of technology coming into play, my assumption and everyone's assumption is that even post-COVID, the way education is going to happen in a hybrid manner, where majority of the education happens in classrooms. Equal amount of education would therefore also happen digitally because we use technology. Parents use technology very much. So the typical parent-teacher meetings have now or will now transform into more of digital parent-teacher meetings, and parents are also an important aspect of the education ecosystem in your schools. So one of the key component of the school education system is the students who are digitally very active. The other one is parents who are equally pro technology, and of course teachers and school management. These are the four pillars of the school education system. Teachers today, when they teach in classes, uh, they don't teach static content. When we used to go to schools or colleges, we were taught static content. Today, when teachers teach in classrooms, the content is absolutely dynamic. Teachers normally use digital technology. Teachers would like to actually enrich the content that they teach with a large number of YouTube videos or links or recent research reports. The teachers, when they want to assess students, again, the traditional way of writing examinations or giving home assignments has been replaced with more of digital assignments. So obviously, when teachers would like to assess students, they would like to assess on digital platforms. The education has also moved from typical education to outcome based education, or what we in our parlance call competency based education, or CBE. Now, CBE normally focuses on competency enhancement of each and every student, individual student. The new education policy, which is now taking shape, also focuses on the competency or outcome-based education. Without going into details, also what is very important and critical is that the education that you're providing is absolutely engaging. And engaging education would mean typical coordination of these four important pieces in the ecosystem: the students, the parents, the teachers, as also school management. One of the pain points for you at the helm of the affairs as principals and heads of the institution is how to manage such large body of students and parents and teachers. Some of the school have multiple branches and different geographical locations. So again, there's a challenge to them as to how to manage different schools. Now, using and weaving all these four pillars into one, strain, you can use a digital platform, a learning management system, which is Brightspace by D2L. This enables schools, school management, parents, teachers, students to actually engage with each other as the learning journey, goes on. Now, how it happens is that this platform, when it's adapted by the school, we try to transfer existing content that you have onto the platform. So all the content which currently teachers teach in the classrooms can be actually migrated to this platform. So the teaching and learning of the static content can be taken care by the students themselves through their laptops or desktops or mobile phones. When teacher interacts with these students, it's more of application of that knowledge into real life scenarios, assessing students using inbuilt assessment tools, even correcting the assignments the way you correct a pen and paper assignment completely digitally. The parents can also be involved in the learning journey of the students. A fantastic amount of data analytics also help you at the helm of the affairs in the institution to actually keep tab on what is happening in the school. In each and every class, in each and every section, you can actually assess at-risk students in the class and find out what are the topics, subtopics, or areas where the student is not performing well, and therefore focus can be actually given to those students who are at risk, and individualized or personalized learning can then take place. And this is exactly the vision of the new education policy, that we focus on individualized, personalized learning needs of each and every individual student. And this is achieved on a learning management platform by using artificial intelligence led intelligent agents. That helps an individual school, teacher, student to actually focus on learning areas which are required by that particular students. This platform also uses a variety of tools which help school management to have a bird's eye view on a daily basis, on a regular basis, as to what is happening in each and every class, how a teacher is teaching, what is the response of students, how students are performing, and also keep tab on how competencies are getting enhanced as the student moves through the ecosystem. One very important feature that all of you would realize as students go to higher classes, and when they come to class 10th or 11th or 12th, one of the major focus of all these students as also the parents is how these students would be able to clear the competitive examinations, or those students who wish to go out of India, and they're trying to get admissions into international universities and schools. How do they fare well and seek admissions in the relevant colleges? So that's the biggest challenge that most of the parents and students and teachers are faced with as the students move to progressively higher classes. Now, all this can be achieved by using learning management platform like Brightspace. How it happens is that a lot of schools use this LMS platform to give additional inputs in terms of preparation of engineering entrance or medical entrance or management or law entrance examinations, which besides the regular piece of education that is imparted in your schools, people can complement and supplement the existing education modus operandi with additional amount of inputs that can be used by students as also parents to ensure that student also learns various nuances and is able to clear the competitive examinations. All this is achieved and can be achieved by using digital technology, digital platforms, and we have a very strong footprint in India. We have through our reseller partners, we are present in 6 towns in India, and we have a large number of team, both technical and support and service and sales team present in India, and we can actually get in touch with all of you who are interested in the show, understanding how this platform, which I just mentioned, works, how it can actually help your institutions to ensure that proper digital learning, digital transformation is happening, how engagement can be enhanced, and how students can utilize today's technology, and teachers can collaborate using this technology to the benefit of every stakeholder, be they the parents, teachers, students, or the school owners. So my request to you will be this: after this session is over, Mr. Gaurav will then disseminate some forms to you, and should you be interested in having a demo of this unique learning management platform, we will be most happy to showcase that demo to you so that you can understand the utility of this kind of a platform and use it for your respective schools going forward. So that's from my side, Ms. Gaurav. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Prem. Yes, absolutely. In fact, while we were discussing about this, the idea is that we usually bring solutions to our members completely at their discretion, and obviously this is between you and the leadership from there on. But having said this, thank you for that message, because that at least sends some context to it for that matter. Right. Thank you very much. Thank you. I would request you to stick around if there are possibly.
No, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Prem, and with which we now get on to what I was mentioning earlier to everyone, and let me quickly share our larger agenda for today, if I may say, which is that the entire top 10 priority series today comes to, if I may say, a final one discussion. Having said this, 25 odd days, I would say, a little shy of a month, as I mentioned, we were going from the north to the east to west, everywhere possibly we could. We interacted with leaders, and all of those leaders who are with me today, I'm at the cost of repeating myself. Thank you once again to all of you for your contribution. And before we start today's discussion, which is, we have wonderful, I was getting some feedback on my WhatsApp, which with respect to the lineup we have today, it's a very, very powerful lineup, wherein, if I may say, these are the cream de la cream discussion of India, in terms of if you can really pick up people who can really be one who can be guiding you, I'm sure these are the ones which we have today. So which is not just the national leg, I also have leaders who were with us during the regional legs as well, so which makes for a fantastic evening ahead of us. So thank you. As I can see, all my speakers are with me, so let me quickly welcome them, beginning with Mrs. Vanita Uppal, OBE, which is out of the British Empire, and Director of the British School. Good to have you with us, Mrs. Uppal. Obviously, Mrs. Uppal needs no introduction. Any amount of adjectives would not suffice her body of work. But having said this, very approachable. That's the way I see people. And having said this, very, very affable. Good to have you, Miss Uppal, and we look
Lovely
forward
to be here. Lovely to be here. Thank you, Gaurav.
Good to see you. I move on to my, so this is the introductory part. I will then go to the sequence of speakers and also share with you the format we like to do today with you. And obviously, this is a one extended conversation which we are having. I welcome, and because this is the new year, first discussion, so Happy New Year to you, Mrs. Uppal. Yeah.
Happy New Year.
I go to our second speaker for today, as in who's part of with us, is Mr. Raghav Podar. Mr. Raghav is the chairman of Podar Education. Obviously, again, needs no introduction. Fantastic. I usually use the word, he's a true brand ambassador for Indian education to the world. And having said this, we interacted last year very, very extensively on IPN, and it's always a pleasure having him. And for the year 2021, this is our first interaction with Raghav as well. So welcome, Raghav. Good to have you back, if I may say.
Thank you, Gaurava. Pleasure to be here.
Fantastic. Moving on to my third speaker, I personally feel one of our speakers are not around, but having said that, I'll skip and I'll move on to the next, which is Mrs. Burman is here with us, Mrs. Amrita Burman, the Deputy Director of the Sunbeam Group of Institution in Varanasi, having operations in the part of, a larger part of Uttar Pradesh, I would say. But having said this, a fantastic leader, having known her for close to a decade, I would say, all my journey of being an entrepreneur, I personally feel in the north or from the eastern leg, whichever leg you may call possibly, Amrita Burman to me always features at top of the list of leaders who I really want to interact with whenever we want to listen to the priorities of the year, if I may say, to say the least, if I may say, right? So welcome, Mrs. Burman. Good to have you, and Happy New Year to you as well. This is the first time we are interacting with you in the new year. So good to have you with us.
Thank you. An absolute pleasure always to speak for IPN. Thank you, Gaurav, so much, and a Happy New Year to you too.
Fantastic. Moving on, I welcome Miss Aditi Misra, who is the principal of DPS Gurgaon. Again, we hosted her very recently. In fact, she was nominated for the Impact Honors. She was with us, and having known from there on her body of work, we believed that she's done substantial contribution, and her experience is very, very rich. So having said this, we obviously would love to hear more about you, because I have only heard about you from other people to begin with. But having said this, that's a good introduction to have, because I feel from the north, while we were putting this together, I mean, the obvious difficulty part was we really had a very large pool of speakers to reach out to. But having said this, at the end of it, eventually it was who were most approachable, if I may say, right? So having said this, Ms. Aditi ji, good to have you with us, and we look forward to hearing from you as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. My second last speaker is Mr. Roshan Gandhi. Mr. Roshan Gandhi is the CEO of the CMS Group of Education in Lucknow. Again, institution which needs no introduction, absolutely pedigree-based institution back here in Lucknow. They have done remarkable work in the field of school education. And I think Roshan is now taking the baton forward and taking it to the next leg of growth in the organization at CMS. Having known him personally as a friend, a fantastic, well-rounded individual with absolute diverse experience, born and brought up, and in fact raised in the UK, brings in a lot of global perspective to the conversation. Having said this, Roshan, good to have you with us again, and a Happy New Year to you as well.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav. Good to see you all, and Happy New Year.
Last but not the least, I think Mrs. Murty have now joined us. Yeah, I can see her. Mrs. Seetha Murty is the Director of Education with the Silver Oaks Group of School in Hyderabad, in southern part of the country. She's also the chair of the IB World School in India. Again, very, very distinguished and I would say unassuming leader and fantastic to interact with. She was obviously my first pick when we wanted to bring in the southern context to the conversation. Thank you, Mrs. Murty. Good to have you as well. We were just doing the round of introduction to all our speakers, which we are now done. And I hope you are there. Yes, good to have you. Fantastic. Okay, so just to outline our agenda, obviously agenda remains fairly known to all of us. We are discussing top 10 priorities.
Thank you, Gaurav, for having me. Thank you.
Thank you. We're discussing top 10 priorities for Indian school leaders for the year 2021. I have already made this as a mention that enough have already been spoken about what has happened in the past 1 year. So I really do not want to add to the misery any further. Having said this, we have wonderful speakers today who will really be helping us, if I may say, prioritize our year in 2021, given the sort of experience they hold for the next 90 odd minute. I think we all can get glued to this conversation and enjoy. And at the same time, once all our speakers have spoken, my request will be that we usually do it in this format. We would love to have your participation. We would love to have your observation. If not any questions, we will take that up. I will request Mrs. Uppal to begin the conversation for us. Mrs. Uppal, over to you.
Thank you, Gaurava, and good evening, everyone. And thank you, Gaurava, for the invitation and for setting up this very, should I say, much needed and helpful platform where so many voices can come together on one platform. As we are now beginning to see, hopefully, the end of this collective nightmare, right? I think there are two things. It's very ironic that in the last 10 months, two things have happened. One, on the one hand, we have seen the commonalities and the synergies between schools and educational institutions. And there is so much more that unites us than divides us, because we were all experiencing the same challenges. At the same time, what has become starkly visible is the inequity and the divisions within the educational landscape of our country. So in many ways, the pandemic, I always say that you should treat every adversity as an opportunity. So I think it has brought these things to the fore. And clearly when we are so many voices speaking on something and I'm sure there'll be a lot of repetition of ideas, because as I said, there is such a synergy in the way educators have approached this and have seen this. And I think one of the things we will come out with, hopefully at the end of the day, maybe not 8 priorities, 10 priorities, but because we will all have our own context to deal with. But I think there will be a common ground to surge ahead and to move ahead, because I'm an eternal optimist and we are now going to be on an upward trajectory. So let me begin by my first assumption, because before we prioritize, let us see what are we basing that on. My first and fundamental assumption is that schools play a pivotal role beyond teaching and learning. Schools are at the heart of a healthy society. They have a very strong custodial and community role. And most of our schools, at least we refer to ourselves as one big extended family, right? And given that we have 66 nationalities, it's almost like a microcosm of the world in our school. So this family has seen the impact of the campus closures. Schools never closed, the campuses closed. And we have seen the impact of that. And that brings me to my priority number 1. And that has to be the well-being of students and staff. And when I say that, when we started the pandemic, everybody was so worried about learning gaps, learning loss. We have to ensure the continuity of learning. And slowly and gradually, everybody realized that the center stage is being occupied not by the content you were delivering, but by emotional and mental well-being of the students. And recently, many of you might have read the letter. I was reading this letter that a superintendent in upstate New York wrote to his teachers and to the parents. And he said, let's not make the mistake. Let's not rush in to make them catch up of lost time. He said, what have they lost? Look at what they've gained.
Absolutely.
Accept the fact that these young people have survived a pandemic. It is such a historic period. Schools went into hibernation, the campuses did, their brains didn't. So what they have learned, what they have experienced, don't brush that aside, build on that. And because we have opened our school 2 weeks back, we have actually spent time just sharing COVID stories. Many children have had to see financial difficulty in their homes. They might have lost a member of the family, a friend, somebody critically ill.
True.
Let's not negate that. Let's acknowledge that sentiment. Let's understand that that is going to shape the human beings there are. Remember the old paradigms, the assessment criteria, that will come, that is coming, and that nobody has ignored that. I mean, if I'm sure I'm speaking with a bunch of colleagues, we have done more than we could on online learning. We have adapted to technology. We've done all that. So the content will take care of itself. It'll happen. But let the kids be resilient. Let us continue to give them the opportunities to become resilient. They have a new history. They're coming into classrooms with a new history. Let us help them make sense of that history. And I think the biggest mistake we will make if we lose this opportunity to see how much children have grown as people. So give them that space, listen to them,
Absolutely.
share their stories, and understand that you are calling them back on campus, not to teach calculus, but for their emotional well-being. When we speak of well-being, the second leg, the most important leg, are your staff. They were, if nothing, I think for us, the pandemic has amplified the role of the teacher. Yes, technology, I'll come to technology in a bit, but the pandemic has shown that your teachers, they are the harbingers of hope, normalcy, safeguarding, and certainty for children. So the children didn't miss while they were away from work. They didn't miss mugging up for tests or doing their worksheets. They missed us. They missed us. They missed people. And you know, the life study report, the OECD report, says that 98% of the children who were interviewed said they preferred personalization to automation. So emotion, as we know, is the gatekeeper of motivation and cognition. And that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed with the pandemic. In fact, it's been amplified. So my appeal to all my fellow colleagues is that please look after your teachers, look after your staff. They have dealt with a lot during this time. They've kept the learning going. Don't pay lip service to them. Invest in their well-being, invest in their training. That is critical. The new online world requires adaptive pedagogy. So invest in their training so they can bring the best to the children. So focus on well-being would be my first priority. Students, families, and teachers. The second would be the understanding that the teacher she is the one who's the connection between what is and what a child can be. So if you have any doubts in your mind, the pandemic should have convinced you that it is the teacher, not your state-of-the-art facilities, that will keep it going for the kids. The second priority, I think, and there has never been a better time for that, is let us review the purpose of education. There is no better time than this. And in doing that, I'm not trying to sound cliched or talk about policy frameworks, etc., but more looking at what Grant Wiggins talked about, the backward design model. What is the outcome? What is the children you want to graduate? What is the values? What are the dispositions, the attributes you want your graduating students to have? Determine the outcomes and then backward design what your classrooms of the future should look like. So when you are reviewing the purpose of education, okay, when you're seeing what is it that you really want education to do for your children, one thing is clear, that you have to focus on continuing high quality teaching and learning. But what will that mean? What will that mean? You have to know your learners. They have to enjoy the journey. You have to personalize the learning. I'll be told, how do you do that with a class full of 50 kids? Recently in our school, we developed a Know My Learner survey, a very simple tool. We made it age appropriate for age 3 to age 18. And we've spent a lot of time collecting feedback and how that has enriched the one-on-one interactions. The teacher who knows the learner shapes the learning best for that learner. I know Singapore started this a few years ago, teach less, learn more. It's about time we embedded that in our thinking and our approach. Content was never king and should never be. We need to clarify, edit, and curate for powerful learning. That's what we need to do. We need to curate the content. Let's prioritize the skills and the processes of learning and not the actual content at the end. Develop student agency. These young, independent, determined, empathetic, compassionate young people need to be given agency. Make them co-creators and co-assessors. Gone are the days when you can sit at your desk and take a red pen and mark books. It's redundant. There is no space for that. Make them co-creators and co-assessors. And the most important thing here is to build transferable skills. So if we want students to think out of the box, be innovative, be critical thinkers, be creative thinkers, they're not born with that skill. You have to create, you have to enable students to become independent learners. So focus on that rather than getting through a content or a syllabus. That technology is here to stay is a given. Flipped classrooms, hybrid models, blended learning, voice activation cameras, Bluetooth, all that is there and it's there to stay. And absolutely, there has been some brilliant learning with that. Whatever model you choose will depend on your context, your resourcing, and your training. But I think going back, and this is my favorite quote, and I think I quote him in every forum, Michael Fullan once said that let the pedagogical horse drive the technological horse, not the other way around, right? So if pedagogy is going to be the driving horse, don't chase gizmos, but focus on training your staff on how to integrate technology into learning. The pandemic has shown that technology can no longer just be a deliverer of content. It is the sole platform to build collaboration and positive engagement. So spend time and energy doing that and ensuring that there is a consistent provision to all your students. This will require careful thinking, redefining, revamping, not just the content, but how do we teach it? And here in Gaurava comes the role of teacher training. There is no point in having grand visions. There is no point in saying our policy will say this and our policy will do that when you don't train the teachers and the leaders in that approach. So invest in training, invest in giving the kind of training that will facilitate the kind of learner you want to produce. The pace of change obviously has been accelerated by the pandemic. In education, it's brought about a quiet revolution. My appeal would be not to cast our learnings aside, but to build on them. I think the biggest thing we've learned is empathy. If we didn't have it, I think that is one emotion. You talk to a student, you talk to a parent, you talk to a teacher. It is looking out for each other. It is caring for each other. So more than ever, what the pandemic has brought forth is a feeling of empathy, a collective approach. We're going to fight this together approach. So let's not give that up. I'm a teacher of history, so I'll refer to a historical concept, the policy of splendid isolation, which Britain had used at the start of the 20th century, that those days are gone. There is no isolation here. Correct. You have to collaborate, you have to build partnerships, and you have to look out for each other. And herein, I think the priority would be, from my point of view, from a policy framework point of view, it would be to encourage public-private partnerships so that we can address the gross issues of inequity. And while we are doing all this, while we are prioritizing all this, let's not forget that the student has to remain at the center. So whatever we do, whatever skills, whatever content, whatever curriculum we offer, it should be with one mantra. And the mantra is that whatever we do should allow every student, not just one or two, every student to become the best version of himself or herself. So that's all I want to say. And I'm just very keen to listen to what my colleagues have to say. Again, thank you very much for inviting me to this forum. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. And in fact, I just want to quickly say that what you mentioned, and for me, this is a resonating thought, which is a well-being. Absolutely. I mean, even corporates have to move from being just a profitable company to someone who is looking beyond that. And I think in the fitting sporting analogy, if I may say, Maradona, who is no longer with us, he used the hand of God, if I may say. Now we need a hand of God in a way to reinvent our school education.
Yeah.
I think that this is a great time, I would say, and this is a very interesting time. That's the way I only see it right now. Having said this, you've outlined few things, which I'm sure we all will go back and ponder on. Yes, so I am not taking much of the time purely because we have to just quickly do the question, other speakers as well. And then we'll come to a very extensive conversational mode as well, which is at the last, I would say. Okay. Moving to my next speaker, Mr. Raghav Podar, over to you.
Yes, Gaurava. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure. And I always enjoy addressing your audience at the IPN because, as I always say, that it's passion and not pedigree that's going to take us forward. And you have with you in this IPN forum a bunch of very passionate educators who truly want to make a difference in the lives of the children, which is far more important than just going for a COE training workshop and just getting a tick mark or a check mark against your name that I've completed that training. So happy to be here. Gaurava, you mentioned something about the hand of God, and we need a hand of God now. Yes, we do need a hand of God, but we actually have millions of hands of God around us in the schools. And by that, I mean not only our students, but our teachers. They are the hands of God. People talk about them being COVID warriors and all. Yes, they are. And Guru Deva Bhava, Acharya Deva Bhava, they are the true hands of God in each of our schools. So hats off to all of you teachers there. The education system of the entire world, the way education is delivered to students is at the cusp of a dimensional shift. The way curriculum was transacted up until now has been disrupted by this pandemic, and we can and have to ensure that it's for the better. The way this pandemic has hit us, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that digital transformation has changed the way education is being delivered in classrooms across the world. More importantly, though, is the purpose aligned with the way these trends are emerging? In this hot pursuit of the latest in virtual learning environments and AR and AI and mixed reality and blended learning, have we missed the woods for the trees? Now, it's not a question of if, but when. At least some of these technologies will become mainstream in classrooms across the world. And even after the pandemic is over, when we restart schools in the campuses in full-fledged form, even then, I hope that the education is going to be blended. It's going to be the new normal, which is going to be phygital, which is physical and digital. But the fundamental question still lies, is are we serving the purpose of education? Getting our children ready with the 21st century skills that they're going to require? Or are we just finding fancier ways of lesson delivery through e-pedagogues? Now, there is no better time than a crisis. They say never waste a good crisis. There is no better time than a crisis that forces us to grow and wakes us up from that slumber of rudimentary pedagogy. We can ill afford another education system that prepares students in and tests students for skills that they won't even require in their 21st century lifetimes. This is the time of transition when these trends are still evolving and still forming. And it is incumbent upon us, especially the education thought leaders, influencers, principals, and the hands of God, to shoulder this responsibility, to steer this evolution of education in the direction which will truly benefit our 21st century learners the most. Our posterity is going to look back at this time as one of those defining moments that comes once in centuries. And they're going to either thank us for the direction in which we took this evolution of education, or they're going to curse us for not rising up to the occasion when we had the opportunity in our hands. We're preparing our children for jobs that don't exist yet. They are going to be solving problems that we don't even know are problems yet by using technologies that haven't even been invented yet. So we're preparing our children for lives 20, 30, 40 years from now when we don't know what the next 2 months are going to look like. This is the time to truly espouse, live, breathe, embody, imbibe those 21st century skills and in our students and in ourselves. We all, on the biggest, fanciest education conclaves of the world, spoke about these 21st century skills. And what are those 21st century skills that people spoke about? Well, we are in 2021. So when we talk about 21st century skills, we have to realize we are already 21 years into the 21st century. Let's not forget that. But yet those skills of ability to cope with limited resources, the ability to be agile, be flexible, resilient, the skill of crisis management, the skill of self-reliance, independence, independent learners, become a critical thinker, problem solver. Now, which of these skills do our tests and exams measure? This is the time truly. The pandemic has given us that opportunity to change the way education is being delivered in classrooms and move away from that over obsession of marks. India and a lot of Asia runs behind marks. Come Jan, Feb, March, and the entire country is running behind marks. And what are marks? What are tests? Tests are meant to be diagnostic. They are meant to diagnose the strengths and the weaknesses of the child so the teacher can adjust her lesson delivery accordingly. That's all what tests are. Yet, tests have become a way, a measure to put a label on a student's forehead in our country on the basis of their intelligence. So if you get 95, you're considered a genius. You got a genius label on your forehead. And if you get 70, oh, average. You get 40, people use pathetic terms like duffer or silly or stupid. And who gives you the right to say that some child who has got 40 in a test, which is primarily measuring memorization and regurgitation, and that makes him unintelligent? We don't have the right to say that. In the 21st century, today, already children have access to Google, and with that, access to limitless information. By the time they grow up, they are going to be auto-prompted with AI and other technologies for the information that they'll be requiring to complete their next task. And yet here, we are running behind just the memorization and regurgitation. It needs to change. In the 21st century, the world economy is not going to reward you for how much you know, but for what you can do with what you know. Not for the amount of knowledge that you have, but for how you apply the knowledge that you have. Now, about the top priorities. So one is obviously changing the over obsession of marks, moving from content mastery to competence mastery. But I'm going to go beyond this topic a little bit and not talk only about a pandemic hangover related priority of mine. I'm going to talk about a priority that's whether a pandemic comes or doesn't come. That's another very, very big priority of mine. And I should shout about it from the rooftops at every forum, which is attracting the best minds of the country into the teaching profession. The quality of an education system of a country is directly proportional to the quality of the teachers of that country. How do we attract the best minds? We have to limit the barriers to entry. So for example, if there's a student in the US in a university and they want to learn chemistry, they might be, or economics, their professor could literally be a Nobel laureate or somebody who is trying to become a Nobel laureate and is probably 5 years away or 3 years away from becoming a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry or economics. In India, I'm talking about schools now, not higher ed, but if somebody who is an expert in their field wants to come and teach in a CBSE school, they first have to get a B.Ed. Which expert in the field is going to spend another couple of years getting a B.Ed so that they can teach in a school? Fine, then you'll have guest lectures, you'll have them for some time, but that doesn't give the true immersion of the quality of teaching learning process that that person, that expert can provide. And India has the experts. It's not like we don't have them. But there are so many barriers to entry into teaching for that expert. Apart from that, the respect. So people talk about Finland. Finland is one of the top performing education systems of the world, consistently ranks at the top of the PISA rankings, TIMSS rankings, and all of that. And people think it's been like that since forever. It hasn't. In the 70s, Finland was actually one of the lower performing OECD and European countries as far as education was concerned. But in the 70s, the National Ministry of Education decided that we're going to change the way the teachers are recruited and taken into the system. So now to become a teacher in Finland, you have to be 1 out of 10. 10% of people who enroll for a B.Ed equivalent course in Finland actually get selected. And even fewer graduates of that B.Ed course actually go on to become teachers. So they're true experts. I'm not at all in any way suggesting to take this solution from Finland and parachute it into India and it's going to be a panacea. It's not. Of course, you have to customize it. The circumstances are different. Of course, it has to be tailor-made for Indian the requirements. But the underlying thought, the fundamental of bringing the teacher at the center, we've had such a rich legacy of Guru Dev Bhava, Acharya Dev Bhava. We need to bring back that respect and reverence for our teachers into the teaching profession, and that is going to attract more people into joining the teaching profession. And of course, yes, monetary also. It's not only respect and reverence and dignity, but also the money aspect has to be brought in. So with those things, let's get back the best minds of our country into teaching. And I have no doubt in the long term, we can become the top performing education system of Asia and perhaps the world also. We have been that in our history and in our ancestry. And I'm sure it can be done again if we are able to bring back the best minds of the country, the best talent of the country into the teaching profession.
Okay, thank you, Raghav. In fact, I wish that happens because that really is one of the answers to meet. I mean, there's absolutely no dearth of talent, provided the talent starts looking towards school education, which has not happened until at least I would say today. Hopefully, it starts from tomorrow. And having said this, I think what you mentioned to me, which really is something which I personally would take this conversation a little further, that somewhere or the other, do you think, maybe I'm asking you a little early in this, that higher education should start collaborating a little more with the Indian schooling system, if I may say, or vice versa? How should that happen largely?
I think it's even bigger than that. It's not only the higher education going with the schools or even the corporates going with higher education and trying to get that bridging between the transitions. I think even beyond that, we need to go on why do children want to run behind marks? Why do parents want to run behind marks? Why do teachers and schools run behind marks? Because when you ask a parent, why do you send your child to school? The right answer should be so that they can maximize their inherent potential, excel at what they're best in. But the real answer is so that they can get into the best college. What do you need to get into the best college? The highest marks. What do those marks measure? Rote, memorization. So it's a vicious circle.
What I meant was with respect to the talent deficit we were talking about, with respect to the, I think as you mentioned, about the teacher profession, you have to be a B.Ed in order to be into the schooling system. What I meant was that can there be a lot of cross-pollination which can happen, which is example, the higher ed, lending that support to, I mean, at least enabling the current staff, if I may say, at what they need from this school system in a way. What I usually feel is that a lot of the time, the sort of talent which we are sending to the colleges is actually needs another 6 months to polish them to be at a certain level to begin with, for that matter. And vice versa. A lot of the colleges do not have that much of equipment or say wherewithal, barring few IITs and IITs, minus those, if I may say. The overall structure is pretty lopsided. I still believe that. That's the way I see it.
And I think I think it's also about the quality or the kind of teaching pedagogy that happens in schools and higher ed, and that doesn't change too much. Correct. So the entire system of memorization and regurgitation continues in higher ed also.
Yes. Okay.
So it needs to be an overhaul of not only the schooling but even the higher ed.
True.
And that will probably, you're right, we can retrofit it from what industry wants.
Yeah. That's what I meant basically, because otherwise we keep putting that onus to the other person, which is now you need this, but we don't have this, or whatever, vice versa. Having said this,
we have to take the mantle and grab the bull by its horns and be like, I'm the one who's going to do it, rather than saying that, listen, he didn't do it or he didn't do it. That's no point. I mean, no one's going to benefit from that.
Thank you, Raghav. In fact, we're trying to do something at the higher ed collaboration as well. Hopefully, we'll share that with you as well. In fact, the larger forum, because we believe, at least what we have gathered so far is that there is a lot of, one is the divide, what they need and what we give. But having said this, the real answer is, what are we doing about it, for that matter, to bridge that gap? We will get back to you on that as well. Moving on, my next speaker is Mrs. Amrita of Burman. Mrs. Burman, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And good evening to everyone. It's always a pleasure speaking to IPN. And I was actually just reminiscing and thinking about how many forums we've had through IPN. And I think that's probably been one of the positives about the pandemic. Actually, there have been many other positives too, because we've really connected so well. It's brought the whole world together. And I think that's one of our biggest learnings, that the globe has shrunk. And this is something that we should keep alive. I would take this now as my number one priority, because it's opened a completely new world. And let's see that, let's hope that this, kind of continues. So I'm going to be speaking, of course, in the backdrop of the pandemic, but also from the point of view that we've been a little luckier in UP. Schools have reopened for 9, 10, 11, and 12. I know that a lot of the states haven't been as lucky as we have. So maybe my top priorities from the time we started with school to now have changed a little, keeping the more practical backdrop in mind. So I'll be speaking from a more simplistic view, possibly. So for me today, seeing that 9, 10, 11, 12 are back, possibly my biggest priority would be to get the rest of the children of the school back to school. Reason, of course, I think is very obvious. Children have missed school. I liked it when Vanita said that, it's basically children are not missing so much the building, but that personal touch. So I think my first priority is let me try and do whatever I can, speak to policymakers, which actually many of us have been trying to do, get our kids back to school. And I think my major concern, which I would keep as a priority, is the little ones. Of course, we know research says that in the age group of 0 to 6, there's 85% development of the brain. And at this time, for the past 8, 9 months, these little ones haven't come to school at all. And as much as we all have really tried on the e-platform to get to them, to kind of occupy them, teach them, do the learning teaching process as much as we could, but the little ones are really, really missing out on their skill building. So my top priority would be to get these little ones back to school. The other thing I also feel that children need to come back, because somewhere down the line, I have also noticed that routine, a discipline, a way of life, which is built when you come to school every day, that connect is completely missing. So the faster the kids come back to school, the happier I'll be. So I think that's my first priority. Their social skills, once again, need to be honed. They've been missing out on company. They really want to be in the arms of their teachers, play on the playing field with their friends. So all that is really going out. So once kids come back, building on their social skills, then building on their mental health, also rightly mentioned by some of my co-panelists, I think is one of our major concerns, because many children, for them, the pandemic has been extremely traumatic. Some of them have either lost a loved one, or some of them have faced a lot of abuse back at home. They actually find solace coming back to school. So I want my kids back. I think that's, for me, for very obvious reasons, the first priority. The other important thing, which I've again noticed once we're all back to work a little, is the fact that we've invested a lot in terms of time, effort, money, whether it's the management, whether it's the teachers, it's the parents, it's the students themselves, in terms of the technological advancement and e-learning. It's happened beautifully. But what I notice is once we get back to school, there are chances of many to slip back. There are a few who were probably not very happy with technology. There are chances that they would like to go back to their comfort zone. So when we speak about teacher training, we have done a lot of training on e-learning. I think what's important now is teacher training and planning on the part of the management principals on the blended format. The blended format is not going to be a very easy way forward, but is obviously the right way forward, because we've already started planning for the next session, and we realize there are lots and lots of ifs and buts, but obviously it is possible. Now, this would be my second priority. Let's get the blended format going beautifully, because the children have learned and gained a lot, and I just want this blend to move beautifully. The other very important thing is, if I have the blended format right, schools are going to become all-weather schools. From a place like Varanasi, is the PM's constituency. Every third day when we were on an offline platform, schools used to be closed. We had issues in actually unwrapping the curriculum in the right way. Time was a major issue. There were huge gaps in learning. So for me, the priority is a good blended learning format, so that we create the much needed all-weather schools. So that's going to be my second priority. The third thing, there was a mention, of course, of the 21st century skills. There's so much that the children, the whole system, teachers, everybody's learned from the pandemic. The kind of empathy, the kind of 21st century skills, I think, that have been unraveled during the pandemic has never been taught to the children earlier. And actually, there was nobody really teaching them. They learned it on their own. We need to understand these skills. We need to have furtherance of these skills. We need to get our children ready and build on these skills. And I also feel, besides these 21st century skills, there are certain very important skills that have got missed out in the e-learning platform. For example, writing skills, basic things like writing skills have been an issue. Basic things like reading skills have not been honed the amount that they should have. Especially, again, I want to go back, because that's my research area, to the junior children, the children who are still building on their basic skills of reading, writing, speaking, and listening, have missed out on a lot of this. So I want to get back, when we get back to school, to basic skills of reading, writing, speaking, and listening. We basically come from a very Hindi-dominated belt. When children come to school, we give them an English-rich environment. I've realized my children are missing out on that. What I really want to give my children is, once again, an English-rich environment, because I think I have nothing against Hindi. We come from a belt and children really speak very well in Hindi at home. But what I really need, I feel as a responsibility to give as an institution to the children, is their English-speaking skills. They get it only from the school. So I want to give my children those kind of basic skills. Another thing that has really been hugely missed out on is the physical fitness and the physical push of the children. I've realized children are really not moving out because of the conditions that are around them. I want my kids to come back to school because I want to make them aware of the fact that they have to get back where they were. They need to come to the playing field, because it's on the playing field that they really are going to hone their physical fitness, at the same time build their social skills on the playing field. So another priority for me is the kinesthetic skills, the physical fitness of the students. I also feel another major thing for a lot of schools, I don't know if some of them have been shy about speaking about this, but I know that it is something that we really need to work on, because when we speak about the wellness of our teachers, I think this is very important, the financial health of the schools. So for me, another very, very big priority is our financial planning, because we really haven't been getting what is due to the school. And there have been a lot of teachers, in fact, in the complete fraternity everywhere, who have suffered, have had salary cuts, have not been able to take back home what they truly deserve to take back. So for me, even my financial planning is a great, great priority. So this was a very simplistic view of my priorities, which could be a little short term, not really long term, but I think this is the need of the hour. So I hope that we'll all come together, we will share a lot of thoughts and tell each other how we can get our priorities right and how it's going to help the complete fraternity as far as education is concerned. So those are my views for the priorities. That's all from
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Burman. In fact, I think I like the term all-weather schools. That's a wonderful term, and I'm sure it will go into my dictionary. And certainly, what I would like to do at this point in time, in order to keep the conversation lively, time to take up a couple of questions from all our previous three speakers. If we can quickly take them. If anyone has an observation to make, that will only help to gauge that, okay, everyone is here. Yeah, Harwant ji. Yeah, Mr. Singh.
Good evening, everybody. It's been a really, really informative session till now, and I love to learn a lot from the worthy speakers, Dr. Vanita Uppal. Your idea of well-being and development of teachers, very well said. And Podar ji, I deeply respect your ideology of Acharya culture. Yes, we actually belongs to a rich dynasty of our culture. And if we can bring basically a kind of mix of our traditional Gurukul culture with a modern techie school system, we can actually start grooming into the same golden bird. So it is something really good. And one more point I would like to raise here, being leaders or heads of the schools, we should realize one very important thing, that teachers are those real wings which make us fly, which actually make us touch the sky. So financial health that Dr. Amrita Burman said, not only schools, but for the teachers. It is really, really very emotional pattern I have seen. I have shared on my Facebook also, a teacher in South who was forced to sell bananas on the roadside because of this pandemic. There must be something to be done for such miserable things. And we should desensitize ourselves for these things. Those who are the creators of all the professions, they should be given due respect. This is a very important point I would want to.
Thank you, Harwant ji. Thank you. Obviously, that was an observation on your part. Ivan, you want to say something? You want to ask a question?
Yes, I just wanted to ask one question. There is a situation when there is a big gap in the lifestyle of the students pre-lockdown and post-lockdown. They have a different lifestyle. Earlier, they used to wake up 6 in the morning. They used to rush throughout the day, study till 6 or 6:30 in the evening. And now, after pandemic, what should we do to bridge that gap between the students' lifestyle today? This is something I would like Ms. Amrita Burman or Raghav Podarji or Vanita Uppalji to speak, please.
So I'll just, Raghav, would you like to go first? Hi, Raghav. In fact, that's an opportunity to say hi to you. Raghav, would you like to go first?
Hi, Amrita. Good to see you.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Harmanji, for your question and for your kind comments. There is going to be transition, and as educators, as parents, as adults, we have to handhold our children into that transition of coming back to a different lifestyle. However, I think we need to do that with confidence, belief, and faith in our children rather than with trepidation, fear, or insecurity for our students. A lot of people get into a defensive, fearful mode that how will my child do this? How will he cope like that? How will this happen? That's not a very good approach to take when getting the child back into a system which was there pre-pandemic. If you instill faith, confidence, belief in the child, automatically the child is far more confident about their own abilities, feels much more self-secure and self-assured. So I would suggest do it with faith and belief and confidence, and don't over stress or overthink or over worry about how will they manage back into this new transition. They will. They're very resilient, the children, and they will manage it. Of course, the beginning time will be a little bit of teething issues. There may be a little speed bumps on the road, even the schools that have reopened campuses recently, even though you have 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th in some states that are allowed, you tend to find just maybe 20%, 30%, 50% of the class size actually comes. But that's fine. Nobody's pressurizing parents or children that, no, you have to come from tomorrow, you should come. Come when you're comfortable. This is a time of where we need to be taking our hand out to each other and helping each other through this difficult time, rather than what has been pitted, unfortunately, in the last 10 months as schools versus parents. It is no school versus parents. The child stands on two legs. One leg is the parent, the other leg is the school. If either of those wobble, the child is the one who's going to fall. So let us do this together with the parents. Parents are our partners, and I'm sure the children with their resilience will shine and rise to the occasion.
Thanks. I would like to just add, sorry.
No, sorry, Amrita, sorry, go first.
So I was just going to add to this, to your question. I completely agree with Raghav that the numbers that have been coming to school have been low. And since you mentioned routine, and I'm trying to connect the two, but what I realized is whether it is e-learning or whether it is the offline classes that most of us are slowly coming back to, it's what you offer to the child. It's what you give to the child. If there is something that's interesting that's happening in school, so even we started with hardly 10% coming. But when children saw value in what's being offered in the school, they all started slowly coming back. It kind of spread with time. Besides that, even on the e-learning platform, I think it's just the same. How do you manage to convince your children about the benefit of a good routine? And do you offer on the plate something interesting? If that happens, routine is formed with time. I agree you can't force, but I do also agree at the same time, it's what you actually get the child to, what is attracting the child. That will get the routine in a child's life. That's all. Vanita, over to you.
I think I'll just take just one more minute. I see we are running out of time. So just one quick minute. I think there are three things. One, bring them in with confidence, but with caution. Two, give them the space, as I said, to reacclimatize. And I couldn't agree more with Amrita that if what you're offering, whether online or offsite, doesn't add value, doesn't engage the student, you'll only get in discipline and no value add. So it's the proof has to be in the pudding. I'll keep quiet now and let's move on to the next speaker. I think we're running out of time.
No. I think it was just a right sort of I would say, live and kicking set of a question, I would say. But there are a couple of questions we'll take up. But my only request is make those questions brief, precise, and let's get it done, right? Murty, you want to ask, and then Gulshan, and I think then we go to the next. Ivan, we come to you as well. Don't worry, you are a home team. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Ji, question. Ji.
Sir, I am audible?
Yes, you are audible, sir. Go ahead.
I am audible, sir?
Ji, go ahead.
Sir, my question is regarding not students. My question is regarding the team member. During the pandemic situations, each and every school shot out the number of team members. Basically, the supporting staff, additional subject teacher, co-curricular activity teachers. So it is, I think, with a big challenge. How can we reconstruct our team?
Okay.
So kindly give your views on this question.
Is it okay?
Either of you, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I think most of the good schools kept their team together. I think that was something that really defined a good school from the other. I don't want to really hurt anyone's sentiments, but I think that's it. The other thing is, in case some of you all kind of lost out on your staff because you genuinely had financial issues, there were students who had financial issues, then I think the right thing is, now that things are getting better, now that you have been standing on your feet a little stronger financially, it's important to try and get all these people back in the fold. Because I don't think many people have got back to different jobs or other jobs, because there aren't too many jobs, unfortunately, as of now in the market. So the best way to build your team is find these people out, reach out to them. If you can afford to give them even something, get your team back. This is the right time as payback time to them. That's my suggestion.
Ms. Gulshan?
Am I audible, Gaurav?
You are. Go ahead.
Okay, good evening, everyone. It has been indeed a pleasure listening to all of you. You all were wonderful speakers. And the matter that you spoke out was so relatable. I was able to relate and connect. So it had been a coincidence, that NEP was published in the year of pandemic. NEP and 2020, 2020 pandemic together. And probably that became a base for all of us to think forth and had pushed us onto the trajectory of altogether a different dimension. My question is that when we are setting out the priorities, the first thing is like bringing students to the school. So how do we build on the habits and attitude? Because the children have been into this for almost 10 months, so habits which are framed are altogether different as of now. So building habitudes. Second is, what about homeschooling? Are we thinking something on it? Because there are people who may come up that we prefer homeschooling. So is it that we have something on priority for that? And then how do we go about it? So these are the two questions.
If I may, I think your first question has been answered, I think, by all of us in the response to Mr. Singh's question. I think homeschooling, I think this is something the pandemic has opened up, that the ability to get schooled in a different format, and as we've been saying, it has to be adaptive, it has to suit the context. Even now when we are getting the children back, what are we saying? We are saying it's your choice, it's parental choice. And now that the online platform is continually being refined and the offerings are there, the provision is there. So for families who prefer that, they have the ability now, unlike earlier when this was only a choice available in the West. This choice is now available in India as well, that you can get homeschooled. But the big but there is that, as I said at the start, schools play a role beyond teaching subjects, right? And why are we bringing them back to campus? Or why are the children coming back to campus? We have an excellent online provision. Why are they coming back? For that human connection, for that human interaction, to develop their social skills, their interpersonal skills. They're missing that. So yes, if as a parent or as an educator, you want to promote homeschooling for 6 months to a year, then you have to create opportunities for your children to get from somewhere else what they're missing out at school. Because as an educator now for more than 35 years, I can say with confidence that the school is such a nurturing ground of personalities, not just of teaching content. So that would be my preference. But of course, everybody's context is different. But now it's available. Now you can think of saying, yes, I can get that online bespoke course and I don't need to go. If that is the context, so be it. But remember, you will still have to fill that void of the community and societal learning that a student gets in school, which they will not get at homeschooling.
Right. And if I can just add on to what Vanita just said, that homeschooling, of course, it may be looked at as if the school is providing what the homeschooling is. But if there are parents who genuinely believe that the role of the school is now far less important and they can homeschool their child well, then they have to realize that maybe they are experts at pedagogy and about their subject, but maybe they're not. And if they're not, then trust the school to be an expert in their pedagogy, and not only pedagogy, but in the holistic development of the child, which is all the skills, the social emotional learning, which doesn't necessarily come out even close to as well as what it can in a school environment. So when you talk about skills like collaboration, teamwork, these kinds of things will not be, or even resilience will not be developed or nurtured as well in a homeschooling environment as they can in a school environment. So if there are parents who want to do homeschooling and have the ability and have that expertise, well, do it, no problem. But if they feel that, no, I can just find an online course, or I can go on to Udemy or to the various courses available online, education is not a transactional phenomenon. It isn't about transacting curriculum. The fundamental crux of any education system is the student-teacher relationship. One of the speakers spoke about that emotion is the harbinger to what true education is. So if that emotional connect is not there with the teacher, you find so many schools, all the educators here will agree with me on this, that you find certain students, maybe they think they're bad in maths or in history in the 5th standard, 6th standard, and suddenly they go to 7th and really excel in that subject. What changes? Maybe it's a different teacher. Maybe that human connect, that emotional connect with that teacher, the belief that the teacher has in that child, and suddenly now the child starts believing, hey, I'm not that bad at maths. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at history or English or whatever it might be. So one must realize that education is not a transactional phenomenon. It's not just going onto a website, onto YouTube, or finding a good course and just doing it from there. It's about the human connect, and that cannot be replaced by homeschooling or by a technology platform.
Thank you very much. I personally do believe that, the schools are the places which are beyond academics. And there is where, the children are being groomed to be good human beings, which are with a 360-degree, nurturing and that the provisioning of holistic environment, that what we want to create. But the question is that given this pandemic, the children have experienced that sort of education remaining at home, so they have certain sort of ideas when they come up with, is it possible to take up the things at home only and not to the school? So there are certain like children who come up with these sort of ideas because they're technologically smart, and they feel that they are much more at ease when it comes to studying at home rather than coming to school. So that was the idea behind asking this question.
No, absolutely. I think Mrs. Burman really want to answer this, but let me quickly jump in and say this, that I'm parking 2 questions, which is Sanjay, I'm parking your question for the last, and I'm holding you back till the last, okay, just to ensure that we get on to our next set of speakers. And Gulshan, please stick around. We'll answer that in detail, maybe at the latter half of this conversation. Okay. I move on to my next speaker, which is leg 1 done, 3 speakers done. We have wonderful 3 more speakers to have this conversation going. Mrs. Murty, over to you. Seetha Murty.
Yeah. Hi, Gaurav.
Hello.
I was actually hoping that I'll be at the end. I'll be the last speaker.
I'll surprise you.
You surprise me, certainly. And I thought, okay, copy to all. Whatever they said is what I wanted to say. Okay. But I can still say that because all the 3 speakers, Vanita, I'm sure you're there. I must say, we coming from this IB fraternity, we use a similar language, similar ideas. I never realized how much we both are alike. Many people say we both are sisters. We look like that too. But even our thinking is so much congruent that I felt so good listening to you. Felt so good listening to Raghav Podar because the energy and the vibrance that he brings to whatever he says, I know he means every word of it. And Amrita Burman, I don't know if you know that I'm a great fan of you. And the way you lead a conversation, you set a great example.
Thank you.
So, Gaurav, when you asked me what are the top 10 priorities for this academic year, because we are talking about a very strange context over here. So, am I permitted to share a few slides?
Sure. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Because my face could get boring and monotonous after a little while, so I thought I should support myself with some pictures. Okay, so let me use this picture. So this Black Swan year, okay, I like this book, Black Swan, written by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. I understand that the most unusual has happened. We all have a shared history now of living through a pandemic and living through so many unusual circumstances that never before have we ever felt ourselves to be having such human commonality. So what I thought is my top priorities, I'll put them into 5 tangibles and 5 intangibles. Because, what is it that I want to prioritize when the children start coming to school from Monday? In our state, it's going to be from Monday. Okay. What is it that I want to prioritize and how do I want to lead the 5 schools that we have towards these priorities? So thanks for helping me start my work this early. Okay, so I'll first share the intangibles. So 5 intangibles that I'm going to focus on. And why am I calling them intangible? And intangible because how much ever I may talk about it, how much ever I may focus about it, these things cannot be seen. They can only be felt. So the first thing that I felt, I should focus much more on this thing called human commonality. Vanita already spoke about it in different words. Okay, we in the IB world are constantly endeavoring to teach children that we are all same. We have so many things that are common to us. And why do we do it? So that we help them grow beyond the lowly things like caste, racism, religion, and things like that. So we want them to understand human commonality. Pandemic has thrown us the biggest example and the biggest lesson to teach children this. I will make sure that I will preserve this lesson and continue to bring it back to them so that they become truly human beings and not belonging to some group or some caste or some religion and trivialize their identity. I want them to remember that I'm a part of this large humanity. So that's one thing that I'm going to focus on. The next thing that I want to do is resilience. The kind of resilience our children and us have built in these 10 months, trust me, we can be compared to Mother Earth because, Mother Earth is said as an example for resilience, for tolerating everything. The way we have built resilience in our children as young as 4 years old or as, bubbly and energetic as 18-year-olds who sat at home all through these months. I haven't heard parents complaining that my children are troubling me, my children are bored, or irritating me. I haven't heard those complaints. It speaks about they building this resilience. And this lesson is something that I will bring back to them because the day children realize that this is what we have inside us and they know the depths of their own abilities. So this is one more thing that I will focus on, continue to focus on because this is what they need to remind themselves that they are great individuals and human beings. The next thing is social and emotional well-being. Okay, with the isolation, with the kind of limitations that they lived through for 10 months, I'm sure some pressures they would have gone through, or maybe not. But I think as a school, all of us are, as schools, all of us are responsible for working on their social and emotional well-being now more than ever before, because unknowingly insecurities must have crept in. Unknowingly fears and apprehensions must have crept in. And we need to work on reassuring them and making them believe once again in life. And that can happen only through social and emotional well-being. So the next lesson I thought is a paradigm shift. All of us are, the way we transition from one paradigm to another. Imagine not having board exams. Imagine moving to the next grade level without a board exam. Imagine working from one continent and working in another continent, living in one continent and working in another continent. The kind of paradigm shift that happened in the last 10 months, particularly in India. I was reading a book where the author commented, Gurcharan Das, in that book, Difficulty of Being Good. He says, nowhere in the world do people preserve their cultural legacies and beliefs more than in India. Okay, so how much we believe in so many systemic things that we have transitioned from that and built a paradigm. And I'm extremely proud of this paradigm shift, even that rickshaw puller or that vegetable vendor has gone through. Okay, I will preserve this paradigm shift as a platform for continuous learning. For me, Edward de Bono's lessons always come to my mind. Rock logic versus water logic. For him, rock logic is stagnant thinking. Water logic is fluid thinking, thinking that flows. I think all of us moved from that stage of rock logic to water logic, thanks to pandemic, but no thanks, we don't want it anymore. And then the next thing is parents as key partners. In all this, how much ever we may have cribbed about non-payment of fees or, parents doing this, saying that, doing that. But I think the way the parents have come into the classroom, I heard parents at the end of it saying that we feel the teachers have come into our homes now. We feel that the school is running inside our study room now. The way parents have become our partners, we don't have to tell them anything anymore because they understand the nuances of teaching and learning. They understand how their children have developed an art of learning. At least in our case, that has been our greatest experience, that we will continue to prioritize parents as key partners. So these are my 5 intangible priorities that I'll continuously work on. Now let me move to my tangible priorities. Learner agency. So again, we in the IB world, Vanita would agree with me. We continuously talk about how do we make the students responsible for their learning. Trust me, from March 2020, and now we're in January 21, I have been seeing only learner agency. If the children are logging in on time and wanting to learn something and wanting to continue the conversation, it's because they have assumed the agency and began to see the joy of learning on their own. Teachers have indeed acted as facilitators and not as sages on the stage. Learner agency is something that we will continue to build in students because at the end of it, learning is for them. So the passing of the responsibility to the learner is something that we're going to continue doing as a priority. Now, physical exercise. Unfortunately, last 10 months have been so very limiting for them that they didn't know that, those boys from grade 7 to 12 love playing that cricket, love playing that basketball, love playing that football, and they just couldn't. Girls would have loved playing the basketball too. Little children would have loved running in the green meadows of the school. They would have missed all that during this period. I think I will compensate for the physical exercise. In fact, I'm even thinking Monday when they come to school, the 9 to 12 graders, all I'm going to tell them is run in the playground. Get the fresh air. Okay, what is most important now is for you to feel the woods, feel the greens, feel the air and the sky and everything. And continuously throughout the year, we're going to focus on a physical exercise that will make them once again energetic and robust. And what's the next thing? Future work skills. As Raghav said, we are in the 21st year of the 21st century. And at least 7 to 8 generations have been born already. And some of them are already going through the schools. If you're still ranting about 21st century skills, we may feel like dinosaurs now. So I think we need to talk about the future work skills now. Adaptive thinking, media literacy, cross-cultural competency, sense making. Most of all, I think one of the biggest skills that I would like to focus on, sense making sense of what's happening around you, in front of you. Adaptive thinking, like many of us have seen that story of Choluteca Bridge, especially during the pandemic. In Central America, this bridge which was built over a river, the river shifted its course and the bridge is standing nowhere. Okay, so the question that has come after seeing that bridge is, do we build to last or do we build to adapt? So adaptive thinking is something that I think we need to focus much more on. And thanks to NEP that has come, which is talking more about skills, I think all of us schools in India will have to begin focusing on prioritizing skills more than the content. When they know what is an adaptive thinking, what is sense making, what is media literacy, they would know what to do with the content. So I will focus on future work skills extensively. And yeah, thanks to NEP again, vocational education, I will be happy bringing it into the mainstream from grade 6, because I'd love to see children doing the carpentry, those electrical works, and I'd love to see them doing this plumbing work. I don't want them to do some bigger things. When a tap goes bad inside their house, they should know how to fix it. When a plug fuses, they should know how to fix it. So I will bring this everyday vocational education. I'll prioritize that first before going on to the next level of vocational education. And just 2 days back, Education Minister addressed all of us, all the CBSE schools too. So he was hinting at internship from grade 6. I am looking forward for all my 6th graders interning with our electricians in the school. interning with our plumbers in the school. So that's one more priority that I'm going to look at, because even during the pandemic, we didn't want to bring that electrician inside the house. So these are basic life skills also, if you look at it. So I'm going to prioritize on this. And what's the next one? Support and collaboration. You know, there's so many schools in the country now who are deprived of what they otherwise should have been doing, whether it's pedagogy or curriculum or teacher training, or even for that matter, financially. Okay. We already support about 14 rural schools, both financially and pedagogically. About 3,000 children benefit from the support we give. I think now we will go full on in identifying more schools in the neighborhood to support them, because what we spend and get as a kind of training from the IB for our teachers in skill development, approaches to learning, social skills, self-management skills, communication, thinking skills, research skills. These are, to weave a curriculum around skills, that too a curriculum in case your children are meeting the CBSE standards or ICSE for that matter. It is a great challenge for Indian mindsets. Thanks to who we are and how we are associated with the IB, we found this way, these avenues 10 years back. I think now we as a school would like to prioritize in giving the support and collaborate with the schools who need this kind of guidance and mentorship, because there are so many people who are wanting to know what is skill-based curriculum. How does it look like? So only when you see it, you believe it. So I think I will prioritize on creating those experiences for the neighborhood schools so that all children will get good quality education. I think that's all I have, Gaurav. These are my top 10 priorities, because all of them are actionable. All of them are things that I feel should be in the agenda of every teacher. And even my students will be able to work in the support and collaboration, because if they have learned through online, okay, they will probably now be the change makers and the leaders. So with that, I feel I have summed up what Vanita, Raghav and Amrita said. I only summed it up.
No, fairly exhaustive and a great split between tangibles and intangibles. So I'm sure there will be a few questions which will come your way. Moving on to our next speaker, Miss Aditi Misra. Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Yadav, and thank you to the previous panelists for summing it up so beautifully. I will share a small presentation. Some of it might be a repeat of what you've already heard, because I think eventually all of us as educators have similar priorities. You may find it resonating with each one of you differently. I think I must give full marks to Mr. Yadav for the question paper he has set, because it set us thinking. It set me thinking. So when I started writing, because I have this habit of writing and noting down, I found that my list went beyond 10. Then I started removing some, I said, no, let me now really narrow it down. And then what is the most important, what is less important became even more confusing. So a paper that can set someone of my age and with my experience thinking, full marks to you, Mr. Yadav. So now what I've done is I have the presentation and I have put my priorities in alphabetical order, not in order of importance. So let me see. Yeah. Is it visible? Yeah. Am I audible? Is it visible now? Yeah. Okay. So my first priority after the pandemic especially is to ensure accessible, equitable and inclusive education in schools. And why I say this is because, all of us now have students from EWS families. We have children. Hello? Has my presentation disappeared?
Yeah. No, it is visible.
I can't see my presentation. I can see somebody's face here instead.
No,
I can no longer see it. Okay. Anyway, okay. I won't know how to make it go forward then, because I can now see.
Is it so? Because I have just made you on the spotlight.
There's somebody else there now. I don't know. Something has happened. Can you remove that?
Is it okay now? Is it okay?
No, I still can't see my presentation.
Hold on.
Shall I start again?
Yeah. If you can do that.
Yeah. Okay, so when I talk about accessible, equitable, and inclusive education, I'm talking about all those children who've been out of schools, many from the privileged homes where education reached them, but a sizable number coming from the economically weaker sections who perhaps did not have that kind of reach. Though we did try, many of us, many schools, I am aware, have tried to provide some sort of device to the children who do not have them, but it has not been 100% successful effort. So my first priority will be to ensure that all these children don't feel left out. We have to spend time and effort in bridging this gap. And it may not be very easy, but it's not impossible. And I'll come to how it's not impossible in a bit. My second priority, again in alphabetical order, is to build a strong alumni network, because this is one group of people which sometimes gets left out. We call them for the annual dinners, and we call them for the annual meets, and occasionally we may reach out to them. But what I have done in this pandemic is involve them in a much bigger role in my school, sometimes to talk to children who were severely stressed out, sometimes to maybe even take lessons, because all the alumni are also working from home. So there was a little bit of flexibility in that timing, that ma'am, I'm free from 3 to 4 because, they work from another country perhaps. So they are free at that time, or I'm free early in the morning, or once my work is over, I have time to, interact. So I was able to use this very supportive and very involved group back into schoolwork. And it has helped me immensely, not just in terms of academics, but also in rebuilding other systems within the school. My third, which everybody has talked about, is continuous professional development. I think on behalf of everybody, we must salute all the teachers who took to the new normal like fish to water, despite the hiccups, despite not being very well trained, because the training was, to be honest, done in a quite a hurry, but they all took to it. And a huge shout out to teachers across the globe who came into this uncharted territory and ensured that they provide the best kind of education to their charges. And this, I think, must continue, because as we had the person who spoke right in the morning, Dr. Maheshwari, he was talking about tech being the new normal in education. And I think all of us agree. And our, the hitherto sort of, doubt we had about tech overtaking or, replacing a teacher has now been replaced by how tech and teacher will work together. Neither will replace the other. So it's going to be a more symbiotic relationship, and all of us in schools have to find ways of ensuring that this happens. My fourth is to encourage student participation in school policy. We have been doing this in the past. I've made it much more bigger involvement in student participation than ever before, because I thought that from their point of view, I really don't know what's happening in their homes. All of us have talked about that they are sometimes feeling stressed out, they're feeling a sense of alienation. So from their point of view, what should I do to change school policy or to adapt school policy to their need? So the moment the schools had to be opened, I made a small committee of alumni, parents, and students to tell me what should I do. Because firstly, for me, it was important to hear their voices. And secondly, to be honest, it became a much more inclusive process, and it did not leave the entire onus on me to think of ways that the school is going to be more safe and more, easily accessible to the children. So I think going forward, I will ensure that student participation increases and does not go back to its regular, that just a handful of children are participating or giving their voices. My fifth was to hone life skills, which is going to take a whole new meaning once the pandemic is over, because children have lost touch with each other. Some of them have openly admitted that they may not feel comfortable coming back and sitting among a class of 30 because they've now fallen out of use. Some of them are very shy. Some of them have increased anxiety levels. So how am I going to hone their life skills and empower them to be able to manage in the now new normal for them that is coming back to school? So far, we're talking about the new normal of being at home and studying at home online. Now their new normal will be to get up early, catch a bus, or come in their car, but reach school at a certain time. We don't know how it's going to be, whether it will be blended, whether it will be small sections coming, whether it will be half a class coming. All those are unanswered questions. So I think for me, the biggest life skill will be to be able to adapt to change. We don't know what the change will be, but whatever it is, adapt to it, and only then will we move forward. My sixth priority will be to increase parent-school partnerships. As I told you, just now Dr. Murty also spoke about how parents are not adversaries. Parents are with us. Yes, there are sometimes this issue of fees is, a slightly sticky one which has come up. But in general, I don't think any parent is an adversary. If he was an adversary, why would his children be in school with us? So it is a partnership. It's a slightly rocky partnership, perhaps, with everything going up and down. But I have found that if you keep the parents on your side, then the chances of success are that much higher. So right now also, whether it was, like I said, when we were opening school, I made a committee of parents to help us. On every day, we have a task force. So there are management people there. There is the admin team there. There is one alumni there. There's one member of the student council, and always two parents. And they volunteer. I don't want to force anybody to come, and I encourage as many to come. And I'll share a little insight which may make some of you smile. Sometimes teachers say, "Ma'am, don't call this parent. He's quite troublesome, very negative." I said, "Aane do na. He'll tell us what is wrong." The one who you call as a fussy parent or a negative parent will probably help us find the loopholes, and we can plug them before somebody else pins them out, or we fall prey to a problematic situation. So I genuinely feel, in this lovely triangle of education, where there are parents and teachers and students, there are two inside the school. The parent is the only one out. The teachers and children are inside the school. So if we involve the parent to some extent, not too much, there's a very fine balance, and according to their needs and their wishes, then we're going to have a pretty win-win situation. My seventh priority will be to map learning outcomes, because children have learned to learn differently now. With the online classes coming up, with a differentiated pedagogy, we need to find ways to map learning outcomes, possibly by peer tutoring, possibly by more formative assessments. But this mapping is going to become very important, because each child will now learn differently. And to come back to the old normal, in my opinion, may not ever be possible. We will possibly never have the kind of school we had in February 2020. And it's a good thing, because I think everything must change, everything must develop, everything must grow. This is an important one. I think it's very important that we share resources through school clusters. All cities of India have Sahodaya groups in CBSE schools. I think the IB also has their conclaves where they have all the IB schools meeting together. I think it's high time there was a resource sharing, not just physical resources, but also manpower resources, so that we can learn from the best of each other. As a school, we have adopted some 2 government schools, and we run a school for the underprivileged in the afternoon. And I think the kind of sharing that we can offer to schools around is tremendous. And likewise, there are things which government schools have, which we don't have, which we can share with them. So I think gone are the times where every school must have everything. It's time we started sharing. And I think the online space has made it more possible, more feasible for sharing of teachers, for sharing of papers, for sharing of any resource that we possibly can. Safe spaces for all stakeholders is again, a very, very important priority, because now with the pandemic, with the schools reopening, parents are still very uncertain of how to send their children. So for me, to send out that message of safety, to send out that message that your children are going to be looked after, irrespective of what problem they may have encountered in the past 10 months or in the past 2 months, we are there for them. So this again, I have a huge committee consisting of teachers, parents, alumni, present students, and I've moved down even in the junior classes. I've got some children, their voices are very cute, and they come up with really interesting ideas. So what is their idea of safety? My idea of safety could be quite different from their idea. So when I'm hearing those voices, it's clarifying my own way forward. And last but not the least, part of NEP again, to transform assessment patterns. Because again, online teaching, online tests have shown that assessments really need to be relooked at. And I think assessments need to be more real, more holistic, more rational, and therefore more acceptable to children. Why should there be a test where children feel the need to use unfair means or to ask each other? For me, that's a failure of an assessment. So to work at all these together, I think these are my top 10 priorities. As I said, I've listed them over here. And that's it from me.
Fantastic, fantastic. In fact, you were
Thank
the only, if I may say, who really stuck to my topic when I say top 10. You got me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Wonderful.
Thank
Thank you. Please stick around for Q&A part as well.
Yes, yes. Yes.
I go to my final speaker, Roshan. Roshan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gaurav, and great to hear all the ideas from respected colleagues. I'll keep it short and sweet since I know we're over time. And I'm afraid, Gaurav, I also won't stick to your strict top 10. And I'll tell you why. It's important my point will be made clear when I tell you why.
Correct.
Because I jotted down 10 points that came to my mind. I thought, okay, let's think of 10 top priorities. And then I thought, you know, I don't like these points that I've written down. Something is missing. Something doesn't feel right. So I left it for, you know, half an hour, and then I came back, and with a fresh mind, I wrote down another top 10 points that came to mind, and it was completely different. So I had 2 sets of top 10 priorities, and I still didn't feel satisfied that this was enough. And I think that's really the point. I think the point is that the priority going forward is not to be prescriptive about what has to happen. There's a million good things that can be done in schools. And I think the environment and the feeling and the atmosphere is there post-pandemic when we've all been through this experience. I don't need to repeat in the interest of time, since all the other speakers have really elaborated on that. But basically, we've been through this experience, and I think everyone knows and understands and feels ready that a change has to happen, and it has to happen very fast. But what the details of that change should look like, that can still that will be experimented with based on the likes and the passions of different teachers, the needs of different schools, the realities of different schooling environments, and demographic backgrounds, and all sorts of things. So to try to list what the key points would be, I don't feel it's a fruitful exercise. What I do feel is that there are certain priorities which are non-negotiable, which will facilitate all of the other potential priorities that we might think of. So if we have 20, 30, 40 potential priorities that will be tailored to different schools, there are a few key points that will be the basis for any other priority. And basically what that comes down to actually is having passionate, well-motivated teachers on the front line. I mean, they've demonstrated themselves to be absolutely incredible in terms of their resilience and in terms of their capacity for sheer hard work, because just sitting there for hours on these Zoom classes, to have to learn new technologies in doing that, and to have to prepare classes in a different way and all sorts of things. And in parallel, they've been, you know, bringing their events online. They've been trying to bring other activities online. They've been doing everything, probably working harder than they were pre-pandemic, significantly. So, you know, they've demonstrated that incredible capacity. So now, you know, to take things to the next level, there are 3 traits that teachers need to have. They need to be happy, they need to be well-trained, and they need to be well-led. So these are the responsibilities of schools to enable teachers to deliver on that passion even more, and then do all of the potential pedagogical improvements and new ways of working that are possible and that are good. So they need to be happy, well-led, and well-trained. So if I just briefly go into these things, a lot of the speakers already recognized the need to prioritize the well-being of our teachers. I mean, they work extremely hard, but in parallel with hard work, we need to take into account, you know, their human needs, and really make that a key priority going forward, whether we're in a pandemic, whether we're out of a pandemic or not. You know, we need to facilitate them being able to, you know, when we want them to do more and more things, we need to do that in such a way that they are not pressured at the same time. What we hear a lot from a lot of teachers across the country sometimes is that when new ideas have to come to the table, when they have to try new things, learn new ways of working, it creates a feeling of a lot of pressure if it's not approached in the right way. So that really brings to the point about being well-trained. What does that mean in practice? if we, so many schools, so many entities have been bringing on teacher training. And when you bring on a new teacher training program, unfortunately, a lot of teachers groan and they say, oh God, I'm so busy already. Why do we have to do this additional training program? But the reason for that is not because they don't want to learn, they don't want to develop, they're not capable. It's because of the way that it's imparted. It's because of the format of the training. It's because of the quality of the training. And basically, if teachers are to embrace this and not feel like it's an additional pressure, training needs to be something which is not which makes them feel truly empowered to do things differently in their classroom after the training. So what we emphasize too much on training workshops and seminars and having resource people come in and speaking to teachers. That's important too. That can introduce a new idea, a new topic to teachers, but that is not what teacher training really means. Teacher training needs to become an integrated process in schools. So teacher training needs to be something that happens at every level of the timetable, and schools will need to start really, reworking their timetables to factor this in order to make it a priority. Training means professional development. Training means that a teacher after a class which has been observed by a colleague or by a senior, that they sit down afterwards and work out, what went well, what could have gone better, that they experience demos of other teachers, that they work together with teachers to plan lessons in a different way and then study each other's lessons and understand what worked well and what didn't work well, that they collaboratively develop teaching practices for their subject, for their grade, for their specific area, that they engage in communities of learning and share their knowledge amongst each other from what they've learned in the classroom, that they engage in action research when they try new techniques in the classroom. They then document that and work out what has worked, and then the whole system learns that way and improves that way. That is what real professional development looks like. So if we really want teachers to be engaging in new practices to make our students communicate better and think critically and collaborate more and become creative, these pedagogical innovations that we need, for teachers to implement a whole range of new techniques, they need to be supported to learn that by a whole ecosystem of professional development that is deeply integrated into a school. And so schools need to make that a priority. They need to open up the time and space in the timetable for that to be possible. Otherwise, it'll become an additional pressure because it sounds like an awful lot of work when it's on top of everything that's already happening. So that space needs to be created, and there are lots of innovative ways that schools can do that without simply appointing more teachers. Schools thanks to the advent of more technologies, a lot of administration time can be reduced. A lot of copy correction time can be reduced. A lot of exam script preparation time can be reduced. You can have more blended learning, more e-learning, enabling teachers you can have a facilitator in the classroom going over a blended learning session while the teacher is engaged in a professional development meeting a couple of times a week. I think there's also a strong case for syllabus reduction in a lot of schools. That's a realization that we came to this year when we realized that we can't have mirroring the entire school timetable online. So we need to reduce some of the syllabus content. And we realized that there's a lot of extraneous stuff there that isn't really helping the children and isn't really boosting their learning. And a lot of schools are going to come to this realization soon. So we can create time and space in a timetable of a teacher to engage in all of these other activities instead. So this is making them happy and well-trained. And then the final point is simply that they need to be well-led. So basically, we need to strengthen school leadership at all levels. What does that mean? I think a lot of schools, there's a lot of variation. Most schools will settle on a good, strong principal who is leading the school, but the distributed leadership can be a very mixed bag in many schools, right? And there isn't often a very direct, very transparent progression line in these leadership positions or selection process. And then there isn't a very robust systematic procedure for developing and training leaders to be very strong in their positions. And I think that's a really important step that we're going to have to take. So when I talked about all of these different professional development activities, you know, who's coordinating that, who's making that happen, who's scaling that up, that's the role of leaders at every level in a school. And so there's going to have to be a lot of support given to leaders to enable them, to facilitate them to take on these new roles. And again, I think a lot of schools will start moving towards having a wider range of leadership roles. So that the principal is not the person having to drive each and every new idea, new initiative that happens in the campus, but rather there is a whole empowered team that can drive things forward in a way that that increases the range of things that can be done in any school. So these are the sort of basic prerequisites for building you know, a new way of working, all the new pedagogies that all the new way of working are built upon these things. So you need to have really, you know, empowered teachers at the center of everything. And in order for them to be empowered, we need to make sure they're happy. We need to make sure they're well trained, and we need to make sure they're well led. And this will enable us to do everything else that we want to do. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I think I noted down happy, well led, and trained. Very well said. I would say that. In fact, that's a moon mantra to a lot of schools too. And thank you for keeping that energy, though I know you were the final speaker. Roshan, thank you very much for your time. I know we have few backup questions to begin with. Let me first check with Ivan. Ivan, if you can ask your question, please. And then the house is obviously open for Q&A now.
I regret very much. I had a hard stop actually
No
at
problem.
6:30, but so I think I'll have to skip the question and answer. So,
Okay, no problem, Roshan.
yeah. Thank you so
Ivan,
much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Ivan, your question?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Raghav. Gaurav. It was a beautiful session. Thank you very much, all the speakers. One of the most important things that I think we notice is trust deficit. The schools did not trust the government policies. Parents did not trust the schools, and then we had issues. The trust deficit has played a very big role, and so there is a lot of gap is there. Now, what confidential building measures to be taken by the schools? I think that is the most important thing that we have to work on. Parents are key partners that has been spoken to, but can we bring the transparency in the school? What is required? You know, that's very important. And collaboration, it has to be there. Aditi ma'am was speaking about collaborating with this one, and then she is also doing that wonderfully. Whether all the schools can do that. So these are the things. That's all. Thank you, Gaurav.
I had muted myself. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Ivan. So you're saying that you want an answer, or was that you're saying as an observation that there's a trust deficit? Certainly there is one, I'm sure. And you're saying that how do we bridge this, right?
Yes,
That's what you're saying.
True,
okay.
true.
Okay. Anyone of? Yeah.
Can I answer?
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
So, you know, trust and transparency are tangibles, and you know, you have to show them. You can't talk about them. Talking about them, the more you talk about them, the less you have, right? The more you tell the parents, trust me, they'll say, no, we won't trust you. So you have to build that trust. It won't happen overnight, but if you have more and more stakeholders inside, so you have one committee looking after, say, physical infrastructure of the school. You have one committee deciding how will the buses run. Will we have buses running? Will they be on half capacity? Then do we double the bus fee? All this should be a unanimous, near unanimous decision. Unanimous to zindagi mein kuch nahi hota, but majority, if they agree upon a certain thing, you immediately put it forward on your website or whatever transparent portal you have, where you say that these and these parents met, and this is the conclusion we have come to. Or send out a Google form. Google forms are the easiest. You immediately make a pie chart and say, okay, 90% parents feel buses should not run. Matter finishes over there. When 90% feel they shouldn't run. So through these actions, you're going to build the trust over the next couple of weeks. So when the time comes to actually open schools for the entire school, when I'm saying maybe April or whenever, you have a large body of people who are supporting you and not looking at you with distrust. That's been my mantra, and it seems to have worked reasonably well. Thank you.
If I can just add to that,
yeah.
if I can just add to that, I Though I agree, Aditi, with your approach to get ownership and a shared understanding of issues, very often you find yourselves that people are looking for that one dramatic event that builds trust. There is no such thing as one dramatic event. Trust is built with small things behind the scenes, sometimes obvious, sometimes not, but it has to be consistent. I think trust is built when the approach is consistent. So, say, for example, if you take the issue of the pandemic, we had one policy stand that our approach will be one of abundant caution. And we pegged everything to that. So, and you communicate. So, I think open and transparent communication, consistency, and the ownership of the vision that you're doing. It's not very often, I don't know, Aditi, whether you would agree with me, it's not very often that every decision can be democratically arrived at, because some there are some things for which you have the big picture, you will make that executive decision. But if you have built that trust in the community, even a difficult decision you make, it will be accepted because people will know that you're doing it for the right reason. So I think that constant integrity, consistency, that is what builds trust. And this combative relationship between parents and student and the school really doesn't help anybody's cause. So as Amrita was also mentioning, Aditi has also mentioned, it is about taking people with you. And that trust is not built overnight. And neither is it dramatically destroyed unless you go and do something really drastic. So you and the parents want the same thing, and I think that's what you have to peg it on. That would be my 2 penny bit.
I just wanted to add.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Completely agree, Vanita.
I just want to add to that I think schools who had been doing a transparent, good job, keeping the child in the center, making all effort to deliver in the right way, not now, but in the past, did not have any issues of trust.
No.
Now, if you thought suddenly during the pandemic, why the trust has gone on, actually people never trusted you before that. It just came so much before at this time. That's all I wanted to add.
True.
Vineet, over to you.
Yeah. Hi, Gaurav. Fantastic.
Good to have you.
Yeah. Thank you. Fantastic set of thoughts and fantastic session, Gaurav. Congratulations to you again. My specific question here is, we have been so much talking about the priorities that we need to look at going ahead. But when we actually revolve around the crux and the core of actually getting this priority right is only when we have our resources. Like we all have been now talking about human capital, how happy we can keep them and how excited and motivated we can keep them to ensure that our priorities are attained. So my specific perspective or a question here would be, to all the panelists that, when we talk about human capital, I would just like to take a step backward. Like, during the time of, actually recruiting them, as, Raghav sir also very correctly said that we don't have some of the excellent and the best minds coming into the education sector. And if you actually compare if you actually compare the secondary and the senior secondary sector to the coaching sector, there's a big disparity between the two because of the remuneration that we are paying to the teachers. Saying that, Gaurav, we all understand that we have the 6th pay, the 7th pay, we have the state pays, but across all schools we have a lot of principals. I think edupreneurs here. There's no standardization as such. I keep taking interviews of teachers, and then we get to hear some very sad stories of teachers being underpaid or being overutilized. So my perspective is that we have all spoken about big priorities, which is there to be taken up for the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe for the next 1 year. How do we attain them without standardizing this? I mean, is there any perspective? Is there any solution to this? Because sitting in the eastern part of the country, I see that this disparity is there among some of the best schools who are actually recovering some very good fees, but then not paying it all to the teachers. So, thoughts.
Get the context here, just to get the context going. Vineet is from Kolkata. He is the CEO of the Newton School there. So I think just to add to it, which is that I think he's coming from a fairly, metro's phenomenon. You're trying to say to us is a problem which is at your level as well, if you are saying, right? So having said this, over to the my panel, please. Yeah.
So sorry, I just want to clarify. Are you looking at standardized pay scales, or are you looking at a standardized approach to staff recruitment? I'm sorry, maybe
I'm looking at the standardized approach, because we of course have standardized pay scales, which has been set by the government. But you know what happens during the recruitment, that irrespective of the fact that you're supposed to hire a teacher on a fifth pay or a sixth pay or a seventh pay, school trying to save money, they actually take them on contractual employment.
Absolutely.
And
I think there are two parts to this question. One is, see, salaries, the way I see it, the first thing you have to do is to have internal parity, right? There are also situations where salaries are negotiated. And I don't think there is anything more demeaning or devaluing of staff. And it's a recipe for disaster, because you will never have a happy staff, because whoever can negotiate better gets, walks away with a fatter paycheck. So the first thing you have to do is that you need internal parity, number one. Number two, and I chair the northern branch of the IB heads. And one of the issues we've faced, and especially with IB schools, is poaching, right? And that, again, as you said, reflects on the approach. It's not to do with the salary, it's the approach, right? And so we have an unwritten kind of rule amongst us that, anybody who wants to leave midterm, the head will pick up the phone and speak to that person that what's going on here. Because, and this is something that is happening. So in our country in particular, teaching has never been adequately compensated or respected, right? Yes. Now what is happening is that anybody who charges more is seen to be a shrew. Oh my God, you are a teacher. Well, a teacher needs money too, right? So I think the preservation, and I just have a slight digression to make. It's not always money. It's also how staff are valued and appreciated and respected. And I think that bit is definitely within your hands. Even if you don't, I know a lot of schools last year who couldn't give any increments to their staff, right? A lot of schools, had a financial restraint, and we managed to do that at our school. And it's not because we're a rich school. It's because my point was that if you want to actually put your money where your mouth is, if you say you value your staff, even a small increment makes them feel that, yes, you mean what you say. So these small gestures, and it wasn't just money, throughout the pandemic, members of the SLT, me included, we reached out to each and every member of staff on a continual basis. So it is the HR approach. It is having an empathetic, compassionate approach that values them. Very often, people don't get into education for money.
Absolutely.
Right? They get into it because it's a passion, it's a vocation, it's a calling, right? And going back to what was said earlier in the panel as well, that's what you want to retain. And even when you are recruiting, when I'm recruiting, I'm not looking for the most competent teacher. I can train anybody. I'm looking for the right attitude and somebody who will be an asset to the organization. So I think if you combine these things together, the money will play a part. Money will play a part. But it's how you treat people. I've seen that I've been at the British School for 30 years now. And I have seen that once people join, they don't want to leave because of the way they are looked after. And it's always not just about money. Yes, standardization in the approach is required. Absolutely. That is very much, and that is up to us. That is up to us. That is up to the people around in this forum. That how do you standardize that approach for recruitment and for looking after people? Because if you want to attract the best talent, you also have to give them the respect that they deserve. And that is something our country, unfortunately, hasn't got sorted in the last 6 to 7 decades. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just add one point? I'm sorry, everywhere I want to button, but still. So I think I completely agree with Vanita. There's just one thing I want to add. It's again the management, all of us actually, we can't delineate ourselves from the top brass, but the fact remains, if we understand that a teacher who's happy adds value to your school, you exist when your children are happy, and therefore your teachers need to be happy. If the approach right from the top is right, salaries will flow, because you understand, even if you understand money, okay, then you understand that money will come when your teacher is happy. So you might as well pay her well. I just wanted to speak this language because possibly many of us understand that.
Okay.
Can I come back to one thing which was discussed about an hour ago? Just one line.
Yeah, please.
I know we're running out of time, Mr. Yadav. Just one.
Yeah,
you know, everybody's talking about homeschooling, and I want to just say that what is going on now is not homeschooling; it's online teaching. Homeschooling is when the parent looks after the education of the child. He or she makes the curriculum. He or she teaches everything. So let's understand this is not homeschooling. A lot of parents are misconstruing this to be homeschooling. It's not. They're getting everything from school. The teachers are coming there. The worksheets are coming from there. Whatever assessments we plan with the school. In a homeschooling situation, the parent does everything. The child is not enrolled in any school. Just for clarity.
I like that clarification. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, any other question? Otherwise, we are completely out of time and I can't hold anyone back any longer because they will start shooting at me if I may say so. But having said this, fantastic panel, an absolutely wonderful conversation. If you see people on video on a meeting, you believe that was a good session. I mean, that's my criteria in a way, right? So having said this, there are questions. Oh, you still have a question? Okay, Geeta, Harmanji, you also have a question after this, okay? Yeah.
Gaurav, I have to thank you and leave.
Yeah, in fact,
I'll have to do the
wish to
same.
leave as well myself.
Yeah, I'll have to do the same. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so having said this, I'll call it a day because I really want to leave because I won't be answering any question any which way. So having said this, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Vanita ji. Thank you, Amrita Burman ma'am. Thank you, Aditi ji. And thank you everyone who was with us. Pleasure having you all and a great conversation, in fact. Hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
This is Murty as well, right? I couldn't say thank you to many.